Welcome. This is an update on sentence data refining. Business is driven by conversations. Conversations about everything related to the exchange of goods and services. In 2005, I co-founded an MGA along with Cayman Insurance Captive for a product that would cover surgical complications related to weight loss surgery. The bariatric surgeons were in a bad spot because insurance companies refused to cover the risks of the surgery. We designed an insurance product and started writing coverage. In the first 45 days, we had two $250,000 limit losses, and we were potentially insolvent. In retrospect, while it was very painful and scary, it was arguably the best thing that ever happened. We started working with the surgeons to redesign the policy and make the necessary changes. From their perspective, they were willing to do whatever was needed to keep the program alive. We had a lot of conversations in the months that followed. We lived in the claims and in the minds of the surgeons, and those conversations are what epitomize the insurance process. It's the way insurance works. Unfortunately, there's an incongruency that exists with conversations. So we can agree that conversations represent knowledge, and conversations are documented in sentences. While sentences are recorded in systems frequently, in notes and narratives and in documents, sentences are incongruent with core systems because there is no way to use the information once it's recorded in the system. And the problem is getting a lot worse. Billions of pages are added daily. That's a 30% annual growth rate. What's not changing is the fact that the average person can read 300 words per minute, or on average read 300 words per minute. So the problem is not getting any better. And to that end, that is the solution that we're going to talk about today, sentence data refining technology, taking this nugget of a diamond and turning it into a brilliant diamond that is, of course, usable and able to accomplish its purpose of making people happy. So sentence data refining gets you usable data and knowledge you've never before been able to access or use. Now, this has a wide variety of purposes for any insurance entity, and the core message of sentence data refining is not that we come with a answer, but rather we come with a platform that enables you to do any one of the things listed here in terms of time savings, loss reduction, and so forth. That's the essence of sentence data refining. As we look at our business model, of course, everything starts with our client. SD Refinery exists as a cloud-based platform as a service, meaning that we are receiving clients' raw data, we process it according to their specifications, and we return refined results. And we're going to look at that in a little bit as we go through the level at which we can provide refined results. One of the standout features of our technology is the ability to distinguish the context of events and activities. And we can think of any written narrative as documentation of events and activities taking place by any variety of characters involved in the respective business story. And something that looks like a fish trying to swim upstream can actually be viewed as something very different when looked at in context. The context by which we're seeing that fish dramatically change based on our ability to see the entire population. When we talk about context, we're talking about, in narrative, events that happened, did not happen, or may happen. Another standout feature of our technology is the granularity of processing results. Business transactions happen at a granular level, and to that end, the ability to look at information at a granular level is of utmost importance. And finally, the speed of our processing is a standout feature for us. In terms of the sentence data refining process, starting on the left and working to the right, client unstructured sentence data can originate from any number of sources. We are agnostic as to the place from which the sentence data originates. And we're going to dig into the core processing here in a moment, but in terms of the client results, we are really agnostic as to how those results are manifest. And we're going to show a fair number of examples around client results. But if we remove the individual pieces and we focus on a couple things here, the vision that we have for the client unstructured sentence data is to make it as efficient to download and analyze sentence data as it is to download and analyze numerical data in a spreadsheet, which of course happens thousands of times a day across the industry. If you look at our core processing, there's really three things that define our secret sauce. First and foremost, a knowledge library facilitates nearly instantaneous data cleansing. And that data cleansing happens at multiple levels, at an industry level, a line of business level, a company level, a branch level, at whatever level is necessary to break down the jargon or the respective dynamics of data that needs to be cleansed. The proprietary tagging system involves semantics and syntactics, and that gets a little bit technical, but semantics basically is the way that the information is going to be classified or how it can be viewed, and syntactics relates to grammar. And so our processing, our proprietary tagging system assigns a tag to every word or token, every piece of punctuation, and every character that resides or exists in the data. And then finally, the extraction of information in context, happened, did not happen, or may happen, is something that is clearly an element of our secret sauce in terms of being able to extract information according to a client's specification. And finally, if we look at results, there's a few different ways in which I want to talk about this. Because we operate at a very granular level, we're able to produce detailed reports which can get summarized at a level according to a client specification, and it also can be presented at a dashboard view. This metric scorecard for workers' comp highlights three different metrics: 3-point contact, investigations, and return to work. And it's an example of our ability to produce metrics that aren't otherwise available. Now, someone could look at this and say, well, wait a minute, I'm getting that information from my workflow, or I'm getting this from a structured data field where an adjuster has to record this information. My response to that is that in the world of claims, we've all seen it, that things don't happen the same way every time. And even more importantly, there are frequently exceptions that require an adjuster to document or to explain how something is happening. And a good example might be in the recorded statements, where there is an effort to document a conversation either with a claimant, with a supervisor, or with a witness. And there could be all sorts of dialogue around the recorded statement about whether the person completed the recorded statement, whether the recorded statement was modified. There's all sorts of iterations that happen in the normal course of business. It's not a simple take the recorded statement, check a box, and move on to the next task. And that's the reason that the notes are so much more informative and useful. Another example is a flash report on incoming medical records, and this illustration shows two scenarios: one for surgery, where there was a flag of a statement in a medical record indicating that the need for surgery was due to an arthritic condition, which of course would suggest that the surgery was unrelated to an actual workers' compensation injury. The second example is a flag for depression, which, as we now know, is an indicator that a claimant may have a more difficult time recovering or getting back to work. While historically we have spent a lot of time working with casualty injuries, just because the bodily injuries and the related activities produces a lot more written documentation. Over the last few months, we have been brought into an emerging problem around roof and water losses. And the notion started around creating a geomap model of homes whereby there would be documentation of roof and water losses and the source of those losses. And there's many ways in which the geomap model could be used. And what we found out as we talked with people is that they were realizing, they being insurance carriers, that roof and water losses are often not about the storms. They relate to dishwashers, to ice makers, to wash machines, to a burst hose. And there's a need to better understand the sources of water losses. As we started talking with more carriers, we basically started finding that there was a lot of manual reading of claim files to understand the nature of roof and water losses. And so to that end, the idea that we can bring a technology to the process that enables them to not take a sample of files, but rather read the entire population is something that's incredibly compelling. And the way in which this data can be then used to redesign coverages, to modify exclusions and pricing, is something that the industry desperately needs. This represents information that we extracted from about 2,500 records that were provided to us, a couple days of claim adjuster entries. And as I described earlier, context relate to what's actually happening with the information. This cause and source is the information that was extracted from the sentences here on the right. The respective context changes based on the meaning expressed in the sentence. The A is affirmed cause and source. The C's represent information that is unrelated. And for this purpose, for this particular project, it was agreed that any statement coming from the insured was not to be considered in terms of identifying the cause of the water damage and the source of the water damage. And for that reason, the C means that the information was ignored. The N relates to information that is being negated and also, of course, is not relevant to the process. And this is an example, of course, of a very detailed level of information being output. Taking this one step further, this slide represents water losses related to appliances. And specifically, it's again showing the information by claim. It's also reflecting the context. And at the very bottom of this slide, you'll see the S, which stands for subjunctive, meaning that it may or may not be relevant to a particular client's question. And in this case, the fact that an air conditioner was being serviced or repaired may or may not be relevant to damages. So, of course, what we care about are the A's, the affirmatives, and what we're showing in this slide is the cause along with the respective appliance. As you look at this in totality, sentence data refining is about taking the valuable knowledge that represents the conversations taking place across your business and refining them into valuable diamonds. Diamonds being the ability to quickly identify and react to changes. So we're creating usable data and or knowledge from your internal sentence data. That's what we're doing. Taking your knowledge and using the knowledge that you previously haven't been able to access, and we're enabling you to create a quicker and better reaction to the needs of the market, as well as the internal changes going on within your business. The things that any executive needs in order to make the right decisions as quickly and efficiently as possible. In the appendix are 3 successful use cases that a reviewer may find informative. The benefit is stated at the bottom of each use case. In this case, or excuse me, in this situation, the result was a 96% faster identification of information, and this is an illustration of the broader solution that's being talked about with this particular company, the ability to create a central knowledge repository that can directly benefit customers as well as benefit the underwriting process. The second use case related to being able to evaluate all the claims of a TPA and being able to quickly identify a problem that led to replacing the TPA. And that information is shown here on this particular slide. One particular aspect of the conclusion that was drawn, specifically showing the fact that the population had an average 45 days to complete contact with a claimant. And then the third use case was completed with multiple carriers, and it relates to processing medical records and specifically surgeries and comorbidities. And ultimately, we're able to show the ability to pull out information with far greater accuracy and significantly less time involved than what was currently being spent. And some of this information is shown in this particular illustration. And then finally, the client testimonials are something that we're very excited about, and we remain a client-centric organization.